Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today with appreciation for the author of the bill, and I think that that is an important place to begin. The author of this bill, who serves as the chair of the Committee on Education, has begun a conversation about the mental health of Wisconsin's youth. And I appreciate that so much, as mental health is one of the issues I hear about most from Wisconsinites. I serve as the ranking member on the Committee on Mental Health, and this conversation is long overdue. Mental health knows no partisan lines, and so as we look to find common ground for the common good, I hope we can begin by acknowledging and appreciating our colleague across the aisle's care and concern for the mental health of Wisconsin's kids. Mr. Speaker, we often come into this space ready to disagree, and we waste no time doing it. We point out the failures and the disappointments in a bill, and we oppose without looking first, while we may oppose where we could build for the future. And today I want to be quick to find the common ground and appreciate where we agree. Wisconsin's kids are facing mental health challenges. It's getting worse, not better. Social media is absolutely a concern, both during the school day and every hour after. And it is the job of legislators to engage in this known crisis. And Mr. Speaker, it is also my job to represent my district. I do that today by opposing this bill. I agree with the bill's author that social media is a concern during the school day. And I agree with the bill's author that devices can be distractions and interrupt learning. We agree on those things, and I agree with the school districts I represent that it's not our job as a legislature to intervene here. I agree with my school districts that it's their job to assess what is right for the people that they serve, which is exactly why they've been doing just that. You see, Mr. Speaker, this bill interferes with local control. It interferes with elected officials who swore oaths to serve our shared constituents in those school districts. And this is an important moment in history to remind all of us that elected officials each have jobs to do, and we shouldn't be doing other people's jobs. When we don't do our jobs, sometimes that looks like abdication of duty. When we overstep the scope of our jobs, sometimes that looks like the abuse of power. In this case, I believe the legislature is overstepping our bounds, stepping outside our role, and interfering with school boards and their ability and responsibility to govern. I want to tell you today what it looks like when local school boards govern locally. When I reached out to the school boards I represent about this bill, I learned that they've spent years working on. One district reading the anxious generation as a community and working together to decide what the policies will look like. That's an example of local officials engaging locally and making decisions with the input of the people they represent. Another district has also been engaging with the community and looking at how to write a plan for an elementary school, a plan for middle school, and a plan for high school. They've been working with the community on what those plans should be. If we as a legislature pass this bill, my understanding is the work that's been done must be redone, and that's not fair to these districts who have been working for years to create these policies. Speaking of fairness, this bill applies only to public schools. That's not fair. Private and charter schools will not be micromanaged by this bill, but public schools will. I understand the bill's author felt it was necessary to carve out private schools and charter schools in order to pass this bill. And I'm curious about that. Why is this legislature unable to do what Indiana's legislature did just a year ago? That doesn't sound like a problem with the bill's author. It sounds like a problem with this legislature. Mr. Speaker, I read the drafting file for this bill, and it cites the Indiana law as the model for the legislation. However, in Indiana, charter schools are included in their bill, and in Wisconsin, they were carved out. It seems to me that if the mental health of Wisconsin's youth were really the priority here, and if the concern behind the bill is that the bill is necessary to help mental health youth, oh my goodness. Then all schools across the state of Wisconsin would be included in this bill. It is not fair when the concerns of voucher school lobbyists are considered valid by Republicans in this legislature, but the same concerns are ignored when they come from public school families, school boards, parents, and administrators. While I believe the original intent was concern about youth mental health, this bill is strangling local control and taking away the ability of local communities to govern their neighborhoods and their schools themselves. I'll close by mentioning some concerns I have about youth mental health and how this bill isn't showing up today with the company that I would hope it would have if we were really, as a legislature, tackling the youth mental health crisis. First, we know that all parents who want to remove cell phones from classrooms, and there are parents who don't. And we know that the pushback from parents opposed to removing cell phones from classrooms is consistent. And what is it? We all know. Parents are terrified their child will be caught in a school shooting and won't be able to contact them. And what is the number one reason we hear from students about why they want their phones during the school day? Because they are terrified they're going to be caught in a school shooting and not be able to contact their parents. Our constituents are terrified that they or a loved one will be shot at school, and that's the driving reason they want phones at school. So, want to be a legislature that assuages these concerns? Pass reasonable gun laws. Change things so our kids and our neighbors aren't terrified of death at school. Do something, because this legislature has done nothing. Year after year after year, school shooting after school shooting. This legislature has done nothing to prevent school shootings. Your answer is instead more guns in schools, more guns on school grounds, and you wonder why it's hard to convince parents and students to set aside those phones for the school day. Make schools safer, pass safer gun laws. And we have a number of education-related bills here today alongside the wireless technology ban, but nothing addressing gun violence in schools, nothing addressing funding mental health resources. Even though we're coming here together today with the shared concern about youth mental health, there are no bills up for a vote today that increase access for mental health care for kids. There's no funding for the potential costs of this wireless device ban to school districts, and there's also no funding for the mental health resources. It seems if we're saying we know there are mental health concerns that are affecting kids' ability to learn, we'd pair our action today with mental health care for kids. We are acknowledging that kids are terrified of school shootings, but we aren't increasing funding for schools to provide the social and emotional learning tools they need to cope with gun violence as a public health crisis. And we all know that COVID has left our kids with learning gaps and mental health challenges, but we are here today without any proposals.
Representative from the 13th, if you can finish up your comments, that'll leave 4 minutes for the author,
wrap
please.
It up. But we are here today without any proposals for mental health resources that would close those gaps. And finally, Wisconsin's kids need us right now. When we met as legislators in 2020, in February, we heard that the mental health of Wisconsin's youth was at a crisis point, and that was a month before the COVID nightmare began. Wisconsin kids are experiencing mental health challenges, and in many cases, disproportionately affecting students of color. And I've spent the last several years speaking up alongside who we know to be the most vulnerable kids, LGBTQ plus youth. And we have heard again and again that introducing anti-LGBTQ plus legislation harms the mental health of these youth. And now we know...
Representative from the 13th, we're now going to go to the representative from the 1st, the bill's author, to finish up.